Respected CeCe Winans, a voice that has touched millions, sat in silence for years, her eyes TV with memories no one could ever imagine. Behind the Golden Awards, the standing ovations, and the gospel music that filled cathedrals and arenas alike, there was a storm, a quiet, relentless storm she never spoke of. Tonight, for the first time, she would break that silence. And the truth she revealed about Joni Lamb would shock not just her fans, but everyone who believed they knew the story. It was a truth buried beneath decades of faith, love, and betrayal. A truth that had left scars invisible to the world, but seared into her very soul. It began with a phone call that no one expected. CeCe had been rehearsing in her home studio, her fingers gliding over the piano keys as if trying to unlock the past, when her phone rang. The voice on the other end, calm yet heavy with urgency, said simply, "You need to know the truth about Joni." At first, she thought it was another misdirected message, some cruel rumor meant to tarnish what she had built. But the tremor in the voice, the kind you feel before a storm breaks, was unmistakable. It pierced through her carefully maintained composure. CeCe's mind raced back to the early days, the 1980s, when gospel music was her lifeline, and Joni Lamb was the person she had trusted the most. Joni, with her warm smile and seemingly endless charm, had been a sister, a friend, a confidant. They laughed together, prayed together, shared dreams that were bigger than either of them could imagine. But behind that smile, there were shadows. Decisions made in whispers. Choices that tore at the very fabric of their bond. CeCe had sensed it once, a fleeting discomfort, a tiny crack in the armor, but she had brushed it aside, unwilling to see what was coming. The first revelation came in fragments, almost cruelly. Joni had been hiding an illness, a degenerative condition that she never disclosed, even to those closest to her. But it wasn't just the illness. It was how it had affected everything around her. Contracts, collaborations, money meant for charitable causes. It had all been entangled in secrecy. CeCe's hands trembled as she recalled the moment she learned how deep the deception went. The realization that her beloved friend had been living a double life, one that manipulated both faith and friendship, was almost too much to bear. As the days unfolded, CeCe discovered letters, documents, and recordings that Joni had left behind, like breadcrumbs through a dark forest. Each note contained apologies that seemed hollow in retrospect, confessions that came too late, and a trail of broken trust that had extended far beyond what anyone could see. Among them, one note made CeCe break down completely. Joni had written, in her final days, about regret. Not for the illness, not for the pain it caused her own body, but for the pain she had inflicted on those she loved most. And CeCe realized that all the awards, all the music, all the standing ovations could never fill the void left by a friendship fractured by secrecy. The media had always painted their relationship as flawless, a shining example of faith and sisterhood in gospel music. But behind closed doors, there were nights of tears, whispered prayers in empty rooms, and phone calls that ended with CeCe holding back sobs so her children wouldn't hear. Even the likes of Kirk Franklin and Whitney Houston, who had shared stages and studios with them, were unaware of the personal battles raging beneath the surface. And yet, CeCe could feel the weight of those hidden truths pressing down on her chest, a reminder that fame and faith often mask the deepest pains, the deepest pains. In the silence of her studio, with only the faint hum of the piano, CeCe whispered Joni's name, as if speaking it aloud could somehow undo the past. But the truth remained. It was a truth about love betrayed, trust shattered, and the unbearable heaviness of realizing that someone you hold closest can leave you questioning everything. And as she prepared to step into the light and tell her story, she knew that the world would see only the surface of the pain, never fully understanding the depth of heartbreak that had haunted her for decades. Beloved CeCe Winans sat in the quiet of her Nashville home, staring at the framed photographs on the wall, the images of her family, of joyous performances, of moments that seemed untouchable. Yet every photograph felt like a reminder of what had been hidden. Joni Lamb's presence lingered like a shadow, even though she was gone. CeCe's mind replayed the last time she had truly spoken to Joni, a conversation that had seemed ordinary at the time. They had laughed about a recording session gone wrong, shared a slice of cake, and promised to pray together that night. But CeCe had no idea that behind Joni's laughter there was a storm brewing, one that would leave them both forever changed. The revelations that followed were relentless. CeCe learned that Joni had secretly struggled with financial mismanagement that threatened not only her own career, but the very organizations they had dedicated themselves to supporting. Funds meant for gospel outreach programs, for scholarships, for families in need, had been misdirected, diverted in ways that only Joni fully understood. CeCe had trusted her implicitly, had leaned on her as a sister, and now she realized that trust had been exploited. The knowledge was a blade twisting in her heart, leaving her feeling both betrayed and complicit for not seeing the signs so owner. One night, alone in her studio, CeCe broke down completely. Her sobs echoed through the room, reverberating off the walls lined with gold records and family portraits. She thought of her mother, Dolores, who had raised her to see the good in everyone, and wondered how she would reconcile this hidden truth with the lessons she had imparted. She thought of her own children, who saw Joni as an aunt figure, a beacon of love and light. How could she explain the fracture, the deception, without shattering the innocence of those young hearts? The burden of these hidden truths pressed on her chest like a physical weight. It was not just the betrayal that hurt. It was the secrecy, the knowledge that Joni had carried this alone, even from those who loved her most. CeCe discovered messages, emails, and journals that revealed Joni's fear of being judged, fear of disappointing those she cared for, and fear of facing her own failures. There were entries that spoke of regret so raw, so immediate, that CeCe found herself crying for Joni, even as she grieved her own loss. The illness that Joni had hidden had been ravaging her for years, yet she never let it touch anyone else's happiness. She had fought quietly, alone, until her final days. Even CeCe's closest friends in the music industry, the ones who had toured with her, shared stages with her, and celebrated her triumphs, were unaware of the private battles. Artists like Mary J. Blige and Yolanda Adams had only seen Joni as the vibrant, supportive presence at CeCe's side, unaware of the layers of struggle that defined her private life. The contrast between public perception and private reality became painfully clear to CeCe. The world had never seen the hidden anguish, the whispered apologies, or the sleepless nights of worry and heartbreak. CeCe began to understand that part of the reason she had stayed silent for so long was fear. Not fear of Joni, who could no longer retaliate, but fear of the world's reaction. To speak the truth about someone she had loved so deeply felt like a betrayal of the memory itself. Yet the truth demanded to be told, and as she prepared to recount it, piece by piece, she realized that the story was not just about betrayal or secrecy. It was about love, about forgiveness, about the human frailty behind even the most sacred of bonds. The weight of that realization settled in her chest like a heavy stone, and she knew there was no turning back. Legendary CeCe Winans remembered the first time the cracks in Joni Lamb's world had truly revealed themselves to her. It was during a recording session for an album that had promised to be a career-defining moment. The studio had been alive with energy, the hum of instruments blending with the voices of gospel icons. But behind Joni's radiant smile, CeCe sensed a tension that she could no longer ignore. Joni's hands shook slightly as she adjusted the microphone, and there was a fleeting sadness in her eyes that CeCe couldn't place. She wanted to ask, to reach across the room and offer comfort, but Joni's pride, and perhaps fear, kept her distant. The truth, CeCe would later learn, was far more complicated. Joni had been grappling not only with her illness, but with a web of personal struggles that had remained hidden from everyone around her. There were strained relationships with distant family members, unspoken debts, and decisions made in isolation that had ripple effects across the lives of those she cared for. CeCe recalled the first letter she found tucked away in Joni's belongings, the paper yellowed and edges worn. The handwriting was precise, almost clinical, but the words carried a heartbreak that cut deeper than any melody. Joni had confessed feelings of guilt, shame, and regret, admitting she feared that one misstep would undo everything she had built. CeCe's grief deepened when she discovered the full extent of Joni's suffering. The illness had taken a toll far beyond the physical. Joni had hidden episodes of pain, moments of despair, and even brushes with depression that threatened her very spirit. CeCe remembered hearing from mutual friends that Joni had been found crying alone late at night, calling CeCe's name but never leaving a message. The realization that someone she had loved as a sister had been silently enduring so much without reaching out shook her to her core. She felt an almost unbearable mix of sorrow, anger, and helplessness. There was also the matter of others who had been entangled in Joni's secrets. Prominent figures in the gospel world, names like Donnie McClurkin and Kirk Franklin, had unknowingly stepped into a labyrinth of deception. Collaborations that seemed harmonious were sometimes fraught with tension, and financial discrepancies had left subtle marks on charitable projects and recording deals. CeCe had to face the reality that Joni's hidden struggles had far-reaching consequences, touching lives she had never anticipated. The complexity of it all made her feel both furious and heartbroken, mourning not only Joni, but the innocence lost in the wake of hidden truths. One night, alone in the studio, CeCe allowed herself to feel the full weight of everything. She played the piano, letting each note mirror the waves of grief crashing through her. Tears fell freely, unimpeded by any sense of composure. She remembered Joni's laugh, the warmth in her voice, the moments of pure joy they had shared, and juxtaposed them against the shadows that now seemed to dominate her memory. The contradictions of love and betrayal, of devotion and secrecy formed a tapestry of emotion that CeCe could not untangle. And yet, even in the darkness, there was a glimmer of understanding. CeCe realized that Joni had been human, flawed, vulnerable, and overwhelmed by circumstances beyond her control. Her mistakes did not erase the love she had given, nor did they negate the bond that had once been unbreakable. CeCe's voice, when she finally spoke, carried the weight of both grief and forgiveness, a testament to the complexity of human relationships and the enduring power of compassion, even in the face of heartbreak. Respected CeCe Winans often reflected on the private moments that had defined her relationship with Joni Lamb, moments the public would never see. She remembered the night they had shared a quiet dinner at a small, dimly lit restaurant in Los Angeles. The laughter that usually came so easily between them was tinged with hesitation. Joni had pushed her food around her plate, eyes darting as if carrying a weight too heavy to bear. Cece, sensing something was off, had asked if she was okay, but Joni's response was the kind she had used all her life. A reassuring smile, a gentle laugh, and the words, "I'm fine, truly." But Cece knew, deep down, that Joni was not fine. It was only later, after Joni's passing, that Cece uncovered the depths of that hidden struggle. Joni had been facing mounting pressure from multiple fronts: health complications, financial responsibilities she could barely manage, and private conflicts that threatened to unravel everything she had worked for. One particularly shocking revelation involved a miscommunication with a major gospel music award committee. A simple clerical error had ballooned into months of tension, creating rifts in relationships that Joni had desperately tried to mend behind closed doors. The stress, coupled with her illness, had left her emotionally isolated. Cece's heart ached as she read through Joni's journals, each entry revealing a person caught between pride and vulnerability. Joni wrote of sleepless nights spent praying, of tears shed in empty rooms, and of a persistent fear that she would disappoint the people she loved most. There was one passage that cut Cece to the core. "I don't want them to see me like this. I don't want anyone to see me falter. If I fall alone." Those words hung in Cece's mind like a haunting melody, a reminder that even the strongest among us can carry unbearable burdens alone.